Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of dark.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De Niro?
I could have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth
Didn't
Hurley.
he go down to Georgia at some point?
Welcome to the Adrian Moment on True Story FM. I'm Ocean, and I'm joined as always by my partner in sports movies dissection, Jim Pullen.
What's up, Ocean?
What's up, Jim?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, I'm just I've found that, you know, I have as you know, my oldest is 18 now, and he's a senior in high school and has a massive case of senioritis, and he is going to start. He's graduating high school here in the next few weeks, and then he's going to go away to college. And so it's interesting that when you have that point, and you know, have that going on as a parent, that you start not only thinking about yourself at high school, but then, you know, even younger about like your own childhood and everything, and like, you know, you're starting to kind of just you think about your kid's childhood, and then I found that I was thinking about my own, and yeah, you know, the other day, I started thinking about something that I was surprised that it related, because it didn't really relate to my kid. I was thinking about like when I used to watch professional wrestling, and that, you know, my love for it. I don't even know. You know how like you have thoughts that you basically go on different tangents in your own mind, and then next thing you know, you end up in this area where you're like, well, why am I thinking about like Paul Orndorff? You know, like I'm thinking about like Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, or like Hulk Hogan, you know, or being a good Hulkamaniac, you know, and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so I found myself, you know, I don't know, does this ever happen to you where you like, you just go on these weird tangents and you end up some weird place?
Yeah. Oh no, definitely.
That has nothing to do with where you started. Yeah,
yep, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and so anyway, so this one I was thinking about like really two things at the same time. One was, you know, about being a good Hulkamaniac, you know, saying your vitamin, what is it? Say eating your vitamins, saying your prayers, and being a good Hulkamaniac.
Drink your milk.
You know? So, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't. You know what? Hulk Hogan may have been lactose intolerant. I do not remember him ever promoting milk.
I remember just the rumors of the buttermilk baths that he would take, but that's all.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's
drink your milk.
I don't drink your milk. Really, buttermilk baths? I don't know anything about that, but let's put a pin.
Okay, we'll have to put a pin on that one later.
Yeah, we'll put a pin on that. Okay. Get back to that. Yeah. So okay. Sorry. So then anyway, as I was the hodgepodge of everything getting together, I was thinking about this time period that I realized I don't talk about much. So I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I was young, there was an aspect, like, you know, like any child of the 80s, I definitely was, you know, into Hulk Hogan and all that stuff. But I started wrestling, my wrestling fandom with the NWA and with, you know, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen. I used to love the Road Warriors. Road Warriors were my first favorite ever, you know, tag team. And at that time, like any other irresponsible, I think I was 10-year-old, any irresponsible 10-year-old, I along with a lot of my other friends, mind you, was in a backyard wrestling league.
Shut up! No way.
Yeah.
No.
And so So what we would do is we would get together in various permutations and have wrestling matches, and we were doing like professional wrestling moves and stuff. What? Like not like, you know, actual wrestling. Yeah. So you know, the like suplexes, and then, you know, you do some body slams like that and everything. And of course we're on grass, so this is not safe.
So no ring, no, like not even like try to fake making a ring. You're just straight up on the grass.
100%. Yeah, the one of the what? Yeah, and it was, and I was thinking about a time where it's a hodgepodge of two different events that occurred in my backyard wrestling career. One was I met out. So I had a friend whose name I honestly wish I could remember right now because I can't. But anyway, he was my tag team partner. And at the time, this was when the British Bulldogs were new in the WWF. And it was WWF then, not WWE as it is now. But anyway, so they were new, and so I think we called ourselves the British Bulldogs, which was really weird because I mean we're a couple of kids from the South. I mean this is Clarksville, Tennessee, but we're representing, and so
representing and plagiarizing.
Exactly. Yes. We are doing both at the same time, and so. And then so we met out on a field with these other two kids where I knew them at the time, but I can't name anyone. And quite honestly, for the purposes of this story, it's probably best that I'm the only one that admits that I was there. And they were the current world tag team champions. And so we decided we were going to challenge them for the belt right there. And it was a pitched battle for about 30 minutes of back and forth of doing all this just basically irresponsibly stupid moves. Do not ever try at home stuff. Right. And then I remember that we finally, my partner and we finally won because we grabbed one of the kids and we both got on either side of him and we did a double DDT into the grass and flipped him over. And then my partner got up on him and we got the pin, the 1, 2, 3.
No way.
Yes.
Okay. Was there an actual belt though to be had after you guys destroyed the other tag team?
No, the belt was we just said. There's no belt. We were just a bunch of like poor 10-year-olds with nothing. The belt, whatever belt we had on. Like it was just we just said we're now the world tag team champions. And mind you, this is like the world. Like it was always a world title. There was no like Tennessee title or city title or county. Like we were the world tag team champions. Yeah.
So what was the biggest attendance that showed up to one of your backyard brawls?
I gotta be honest, I don't think anybody ever showed up that wasn't participating.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it was just some silly, stupid stuff to do in a backyard. Now we weren't I've seen other videos of other people doing it that are way crazier, where like they're jumping off buildings and doing like all this other stuff.
Breaking tables and stuff.
And the other part of it that I do find interesting is that I remember believing and thinking that they were really doing these moves to each other, that because wrestling, while not fake, and I will defend that, it is not fake, it is scripted where they understand the outcome, but what they're doing, those bumps and everything they're taking, I mean those hurt. Yeah. Right. And so but we seem to be doing it in a way to make sure we didn't legit damage each other, but I mean there were bumps and bruises and scars and cuts and stuff like that and everything that did occur from it. But
I mean, it was just normal tomfoolery by the children.
It was what some would consider normal tomfoolery by the children, and so that was but that was I started thinking about that, and then also the only other time that I was ever in a battle royale was doing that, where it was because we were the champs. Oh yeah, so a week later, some other kids started popping off. And so they were trying to pop off about us, and I was like, "No, we're the champs at that." So we're so then we went to their house. And then there was about 7 or 8 of them other kids there, and the two main ones that were popping out that they were going to take our belt and everything. Then we just in the midst of all of the trash talking, just started doing how in wrestling when all of a sudden they start just going at it with each other. Yeah, we started doing that. Yeah, we
just started doing everybody's that. Just swirling around, just slapping each other on the chest.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just going at it. Right. Cross-eye elbow, throw each other around, everything that just going at it. And that one, I don't even remember how it ended, but I do remember we left as the champs because it wasn't a sanctioned tag team match.
It wasn't sanctioned. You're kidding me. That's hilarious, man. You guys had so much thought in this.
Yes.
Oh man, there's nothing like a good childhood like that, man. There is nothing like those kind of core memories.
Yes, absolutely. And these are all things that nobody's gonna do them now. But I guess
maybe
do it now.
Maybe, but
maybe some kids would.
But the difference is now they're gonna do it for the likes. Because as you're telling the story, I was like, man, nobody got this on film. Whereas like now,
No.
this is on like many people's phones. If this was happening now,
yeah.
People coming out of the windows from their houses or apartments or wherever, like they hear all the ruckus and they're looking outside. There are people now that are looking outside and they hear the ruckus and they start recording. But back then, no, like somebody's like, oh, look at all those kids out there playing.
No. If they were even paying attention to us at all, they're just being ignored because, yes, but it was a lot of fun at the time. It is one of the many aspects of my childhood that I look back on and like, wow, how did I not get more seriously injured?
Right.
Doing any of this. But yeah.
So did you have a wrestling name though? I gotta ask a couple of questions here before we move on.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't. No. I would honestly, I would plagiarize it, right? So sometimes I would be, because of the British Bulldogs, the British Bulldogs was a tag team back then. It was, it was a Davy Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid. So for a while, I was the Dynamite Kid.
Okay.
Because I like Dynamite Kid better than Davy Boy Smith, even though Davy Boy Smith had a much better wrestling career. But for a while, I was him. And then there was a bit there where the Road Warriors, who I loved because of Hawk and Animal, they were amazing. And so I was Animal for a bit, but there was the whole thing of where I was like, while I wasn't fully cognizant of all of of everything when it came to of racism and stuff like that and all that. I was in Tennessee, so you're aware. But as a black guy, I was like, I don't know that I should be referring to myself as an animal. That just, it didn't feel right. So I just went back to Dynamite Kid. So I stayed that for a bit. And then other than that, it was just, just my name, like people just call me Murph, my last name. So that would be it. But no, I didn't have a really cool moniker.
No. All right. I wouldn't have either. I would have just been like following right along suit with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I mean, that he was like one of my favorites because we shared a name and likeness, and
exactly.
It was just like dirty and gruff,
tough guy.
And a dude that walked around with a 2x4. I mean, that was pretty cool. But okay, so one more follow up. How many matches did you guys have, like overall? I mean, you're sitting here telling us about two very pivotal moments,
Yes.
So like, do you have how many matches?
I don't know exactly the number. I know I had more than the two, but the two are what I remember the most.
Okay.
Like there were others that were sprinkled about here and there, but it's one of those things. It really is kind of one of those childhood movies. It's one of those childhood memories where I remember it every now and again just because it pops in my head, but it wasn't like, it wasn't a pivotal thing in my childhood. It didn't define my childhood or anything about me other than the fact that, it was a moment of where I was a giant wrestling fan. And that, I had other kids in the neighborhood that also were wrestling fans, and we just did this. It was not thought out.
It was not thought. Well, no, you were being a kid, man. I mean, it's not like,
Exactly.
I don't know, like going to WrestleMania or anything like that. That takes a little while to get to, and planning out.
Yes. No, it does. And I did that when I was an adult. Like they were in Seattle in 2003. It was WrestleMania 19, and this was actually I was a few years removed from really being into wrestling at that point. But I went to it for the experience, because just to say that I'd been to a WrestleMania and everything, and I really wanted to go. And so I went, and I went with Cedric, Ced and I went to it.
Okay, all right.
To it because they were at where the Mariners play. Was it the Safe back then in 2003?
Yeah, it was Safeco Field.
Was it called the Safeco? Yep. Yeah, it's called Safe. Yeah, so it was there, and so we went to just go and just have the experience of going, and I do remember, honestly, tangentially to this for a second, was that at the time I was like, oh, we're doing this for the memory, like we'll always remember we went to WrestleMania, and then I saw that on Peacock. They have all the WrestleManias, and so I saw about a month ago. I threw it on to see the one that I went to, and I realized as I'm watching the first match, and then I'm watching the second match, and then I'm watching the third match, and I'm like, I have no memory of any of this.
Really?
But like none. Like Limp Bizkit did a whole performance, like a concert there, and I was like, I have no memory.
See, I
have no memory of any of it.
We were down in Arizona, and we paid for it because it was at the Safe. So we wanted to see like what would WrestleMania look like there. And I remember a couple of big things that were happening or something like that. Like some big skits, like, I don't know, like the biggest ladder or something like that, or somebody like jumped off of something that was huge. But yeah, I don't remember. But you were there. You guys were there.
I was there.
And you're like, I don't remember this.
I don't remember any of it. And so yeah, it's interesting how that goes. But I found that recently I was excited about a new movie that came out about wrestling, and the name of the movie is The Iron Claw.
Ever since I was a child, people said my family was cursed. Mom tried to protect us with God. Pop tried to protect us with wrestling. He said if we were the toughest, the strongest, nothing could ever hurt us. I believed him. We all did.
Morning.
Pants tomorrow, please, David.
Kerry, I want you to join your brothers in the ring.
Yes, sir. I love that.
Woo! Now, we all know Kerry's my favorite, then Kev, then David, then Mike. But the rankings can always change.
What do you want in life, Kevin Von Erich?
More ribs? I want to be with my family. You know, be with my brothers.
What do you like to do with your brothers?
Together, we can do anything.
We're here to restore justice to the Wrestling Federation that our father built with his own two hands. The hands that were passed down to us. The hands that will deliver the Iron Claw to you.
So what do you think? Like we're alive.
I love your family, Kevin.
You gonna be an uncle?
Yes, sir. Oh, man, that makes me so happy.
I'll talk to you about something, Mom. Dad's too tough on us. You gotta say something.
Baby, that's what your brothers are for.
Feel that? You feel that? That's pressure.
You're pushing too hard.
I'm fine, Kev. Seriously, I'm just sick.
I'm scared, man. It all out of control.
That's a terrible accident.
I should have stopped him. I need to think about my family.
Your job is to wrestle. Live up to that deal, or we are through.
I told you to look out for him!
I just love being out there with you guys. It's the only thing that matters to me.
The Von Erich will forever be the greatest family in the history of wrestling!
So when I first heard about the Iron Claw, about it being about the Von Erich family, I only knew of I'd heard of Kerry Von Erich, and I knew there were brothers, but that was really the sum total of what I knew about it. Like, so in your wrestling travels, did you know anything about the Von Erichs? Anything before you saw the movie?
You know, when I saw that the movie was coming out, I was like, ooh, that looks like that would be an interesting movie to watch. Only because I knew of Von Erich. I just knew the name, right? I didn't even know like how big the family was or how small or anything like that. So I just, you know, and I saw some of the actors that were in the movie. And I like Jeremy Allen White. So
Yeah.
I dig him, you know, so it was like, okay, cool.
I thought was going to be the star. Yeah, who I thought was going to be the star because he's Kerry Von Erich. But
I totally thought so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I thought as well. And then it turns out, nope, Zac Efron in. Look, I'm not gonna lie, this is the best acting I've ever seen Zac Efron do. Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich is actually the star of the movie. But yeah, so it was interesting. I didn't have much about them either. I mean, you know, the whole NWA that they're talking about, that was what I really grew up on. NWA was based in Atlanta back when wrestling was still regional. I was growing up in Tennessee, so most of what I saw was that. And so for me, Ric Flair was a household name. You know, like I followed him, everything he did. I thought they were amazing. Although at the time, he was always a bad guy, so I hated Ric Flair.
Right.
Looking back on it, it's only because he was a genius.
He was a genius, complete genius. Like I agree. I mean, what little I watched back then too. Yep, same thing with Rick and everybody. Yeah.
What is your favorite part of the movie?
I mean, for me,
or yes, for you, a favorite. Or what's the best part of the film? Yes, what is the best part of the film? Yes, for two.
Oh, Yeah, I'm just a straight up sucker. Once, watching the whole movie and all that, I'm a straight up sucker for dark, dysfunctional family, bad dynamics. You got some tragedy. It's dark, man. I don't know why I'm a happy, jovial type dude, but like these types of movies that have just like some dark stuff in it, I really like. I don't know why. Like the whole family dynamic. Let's just talk about that. Like, let's just talk about the family motto that these kids grew up with.
Ever since I was a child, people said my family was cursed. We never talked about it. And I don't know if my brothers and I believed it back then, but bad things kept happening. Mom tried to protect us with God. Pop tried to protect us with wrestling. He said if we were the toughest, the strongest, the most successful, nothing could ever hurt us. I believed him. We all did. He loved our father. And we loved wrestling.
I'm not saying like I like the motto and this is why I like it in the movie, but just think about that whole motto. Toughest, strongest, the most successful, nothing could ever hurt us, right? And that's just like constantly like pounded into your head. For that family dynamic, that whole aspect of the storyline, which is there throughout the whole movie. Everything that these kids do and everything that the dad does, it's just constantly you're reminded about that whole family motto. And I don't know, man, there's just something about that I just really, really liked that aspect of the storyline. And then you start figuring out, I didn't realize
you like the aspect of the father drilling this motto into their heads that they could then basically just work really hard and overcome anything.
Yeah. No, just from the story aspect of it. Yeah. Because then to me, it really brings home the tragedy aspect of the storyline. And it's unfortunate that it's, completely true. There's a lot of tragedy that ended up happening within this fammy. But I mean,
yes,
it really struck me, that motto. Cause it's like, at the beginning of the movie, it's the driving force for people, or for Kevin and for Kerry, for everybody's success. It's like, hey, you know what? If we're going to get kicked down, something happens, we're going to be able to get past this, nothing can hurt us. Right. And then it just continues to blossom. And it's like, they believe in this so much to the point that it brings on the tragedy. It's to me that at least it brings on the tragedy to them, because you believe in it so much. And then all of a sudden, like you've hit a wall and you don't know how to deal with anything else, because this is the motto that's just been driven into your head your whole entire life.
Well, I mean, I guess, is it that, or is it Fritz Von Erich, the father, played by Holt McElhaney, was, they really portrayed him in the movie, or at least attempted to, where he was an overbearing man.
Yeah.
And, he was really on them and driving them, and that in effect, that he was able to take their inborn or inbred love of him, and then use that to push them to this place, to then, in a sense, push his dreams onto them. And right. that he wanted to be more successful in wrestling than he was, even though he was pretty successful, right? He was never world champion, but other than that, he was a pretty successful wrestler. He's very popular, and he made good money, became a promoter, and started owning was at World Class Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
But that he was pushing his dreams on them to become the wrestler or the world champion, which he never became, and that it was it. So did you feel that it was? They bought into the motto and then believed it and use it to push themselves, or they were just constantly looking for extra layers of approval and love from their father, and that was what was driving them?
I think it was just that constant motto that was driven. And this is why. See, since he never reached the level of success that he was using that motto to continue to drive for, and he never got the belt, really successful people all have some kind of like drive and some kind of motto that's going to get them over to the point. Since he didn't get to where he wanted to go, he handed that motto to his whole family. and the kids, they're growing up and watching him, and he keeps, telling them all about it. I'm going to be the best. In order to be the best, I got to be the toughest and the strongest and the most successful, and he just keeps constantly saying that. Right. And he gets the Cadillac and all that, to be able to show the success, and he shows off, he shows off the success, because he got the Cadillac. Right. And they're towing around their house and all that. So, these kids are just constantly driven with his successful motto that he's trying to drive himself. And then it just becomes the family drive, because this is all the kids see and all that. And his constant will for wanting to succeed, but he doesn't get there. So yeah, it's like he hands it off to his family, just like very much with the curse that he brought on into his family as well by changing their name.
Really? Are you buying? Did the movie convince you that there was a curse?
No, I didn't. No,
Okay.
it didn't. There's a lot of misfortune that definitely does happen, and I don't believe that there's necessarily a curse.
Yes.
But
Well, I guess in being fair to this movie, what we should let's talk about some of those misfortunes.
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
The first one, the first one is one that is not their fault at all, right? That Kerry Von Erich, early in the movie, they're showing Kevin being a wrestler and trying to work up on his game and working with his brother David. And one of the things I thought was interesting to me is that Kerry, being the biggest one, really for the first 25 minutes or so, isn't even in the movie. And so
Right.
they finally show that that he is training to be in the Olympics for discus, and apparently he's pretty good. But this movie is set in 1979, and unless you were really paying attention to when you're watching the movie, and I was not, I did not remember. Oh yeah, the next one is 1980, which the United States boycotted, and so then his dreams of being an Olympian were, in a sense, dashed as a result of something that he had no control over, know anything about. It wasn't his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. It was just the United States, for political reasons, boycotted the 1980 Olympics.
Yeah. And then he leans on their family motto. Well, once he gets settled in a little bit, and hey, we want to bring you on, and we're gonna get this belt into the house.
Yes, yeah. Well, and honestly, in that part of the movie, that I think of, like, the between him, yeah, exactly. His hopes being dashed, and then when they actually get to starting getting to the tragedies, they spent a lot of time trying to develop the bonding of the brothers and how much they were, with each other. Because the four main brothers, the Kevin, Kerry, David, Michael. Right. And so that, they're bonding, like the whole scene of them playing football and them doing all these, these other things that they're trying to build that into the movie. And so then at that point, do you start to then feel that, oh, well, that, that things are going to be better? Or did that resonate with you in any way?
What part?
The whole them, all of the scenes and all the work around them bonding together and everything up to that point, right? Because I think that has to resonate for the rest to pay off. So then at that point, were you resonating at how much? I mean, clearly these people loved each other.
Right.
I'm not disputing that about the brothers.
No,
but like, did that resonate with you when you were seeing it?
It does, because, and even to the point that, there's a couple of times that Fritz says, and the mom even says, like, when the boys are having a little tussle between each other, one of the parents had always said, "Oh, you boys, you got to work that out amongst yourselves." Right. Mm-hmm. And sure, yes, classic parents will say that kind of stuff all the time. But, these were some pretty critical moments, just, I think even to that point, it really started like pounding and resonating even more and more. Like, each little step of the way, you get this feeling of like, hey, these boys, they're really close together. And Kevin even saying, to the point of like, oh, someday I want to buy a ranch and everybody's going to live on the ranch with me. And, like, his idea of family was bringing his family plus his wife, it was like, hey, wife, you're a plus one. We're going to buy a ranch and you're a plus one to this whole party, and it was like,
exactly.
The embodiment of those boys together, it definitely resonated with you. And you feel that throughout the whole movie. And then the tragedy hits.
Right. And the first tragedy of David. And
the tragedy of David.
Yes. And dying in a hotel room. dying in a hotel room in Japan. Like, yeah,
Japan.
Well, in Japan, yeah, and it's and there's an aspect of where that's clearly the greater tragedy, but then I think there's a precursor. So this movie is one big gut punch. Right. And so
no pun intended.
Exactly. Yeah. No pun intended. Yeah. It's a one gut punch after the next. And so there is even the lesser tragedy of David is leapfrogging Kevin. Right. Because up to this point in the movie, it's all about we're going to all work to support Kevin to make Kevin the next, he's going to be the first world heavyweight champion from the Von Erich family. And he's going to be the guy. And then over time, because Kevin's mic work isn't as good as David's is, that over time David ends up leapfrogging over him to going to Japan to then get potentially his world heavyweight, his world championship shot, and he dies mysteriously in a hotel room, and it was the movie they described it as a ruptured intestines. Ruptured intestines.
That's what Dad said.
That's what Dad said, and Kevin asked the question that was on my mind is like, well, how does that happen, right? And so, and that's the first tragedy, right? And that to me really is a true tragedy, right? Your son who you thought was going to go on, do great things, healthy, good shape, does, it's a professional wrestler, dies from a ruptured intestine in a hospital. In a hotel.
And it was like on the eve, right, of the of the big match.
So that was a tragedy. And I thought, but also I think too that in that tragedy, the whole idea of the motto of the father being driven, that at the funeral,
right?
He then talks to the sons about, hey, who's going to take a shot?
It's like, there's no time for crying, boys. Now who's going to take it? Pull up your pants and strap on your boots. I mean, he doesn't say it like that, but he might as well, and it's like, all right, well, we got a chance to get this belt into the house. Who's going to step up? It's going to be up to one of you.
Right. And then when two of them decide they want it, they flip a coin. Right.
Yeah.
Which I was like, well, that's just a crazy way to decide anything. Like, we're flipping a coin.
Well, it's like poor Kevin, right? I mean, it's like, here you are, you're busting your butt. You are the poster boy of the house. You are everything that your dad wants in a wrestler, except you don't know how to talk dookie when it comes time for the interviews. And, he comes across like a goofball, right? So, it's like, I'm thinking at that point in time here after the tragedy and they're getting ready to do the coin flip, I'm thinking, Dad, are you doing the coin flip because you truly don't see the whole package in Kevin? Like, you see the athleticism in Kevin, but anybody else in the family can do a little bit better at the smack talk or, just being different than just like, I don't know, Kevin kind of comes across as kind of like a Neanderthal almost, So does Dad not want to see his son succeed because like physically he's great, but he doesn't bring the whole package? So it's like, dude, why you're bringing it to a coin flip just by chance, a 60-40 chance to have your family represented.
Did you just say a coin flip was a 60-40 chance?
Yeah, I was kidding. I want to say 60-40 chance.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not how math works.
I know. So, I'm kidding. Okay. Come on now.
All right. So, but yes, there's the chance of that. But then, I guess though, so being a longtime wrestling fan, looking at this, there's an aspect of that where, and I'm going on a slight tangent here. So
do it.
There's aspects of that where how the movie portrays professional wrestling, and that is one aspect of it that they did get right, in that your ability to work on a microphone is definitely commensurate to your ability to become a world champion. Yeah. Because it's very rarely there have been some gimmicks throughout the years, and I can talk about some of them, but it's very rare that you're not going to have a Bill Goldberg, right? Because Bill Goldberg's gimmick was he didn't talk. But for the most part, most of them are like, if you think about your Hulk Hogan or your Ric Flair or your Bret Harts, or your Stone Cold Steve Austin or your The Rock, these big, huge wrestlers, or they were world champions, they were most popular, everything they're working on the mic. I mean, even like back in that time frame, like Jerry the King Lawler, he was a regional guy in Nashville, right? And so most people know him as a little goofball from the WWF as an announcer, but when he was a wrestler, part of love his thing was he was amazing on a microphone. And that is what creates how people respond to you because the other thing they do well, and I'm going to stop there because I think there's a lot of things as far as how they portray wrestling that they don't do well. But of the three things they do well, the second thing they do well is his whole talking about how, like, you know, wrestling isn't fake because it's not fake. It is scripted, and that is different. And so that he's saying, well, I'm doing well. It's like any job. If I do well, I get promoted, and this is like you get promoted to the next level. And then when you're considered the best, this is your heavyweight champion, right? And that is really what it is. But part of that journey and part of that road is going to be how well you can work a microphone and how well you can get a crowd that cares about what happens to you.
As well as the physical pain that everybody has to endure, the beatings that you have to endure.
Yes. Well, I mean, beatings, I think, is maybe a little bit tough way to think about it. It's like, it's going to hurt. You know, they're doing a lot of things. They're taking bumps and they're doing things like that. But like, you know, they're not like, I don't know. When you say beatings, I think of like, you know, a boxer who only wins 500% of his matches, right? Where sometimes he wins and sometimes he gets really beat down. It's not that, but it is. It's very painful, and there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know, man. So the reason why I say beatings, though, and yeah, I know there's scripted, and there's, you know, some people will use the word fake. I like the term it's scripted, because there's no way that you could fake a body slam outside of the mat on concrete, you know, and it's portrayed in the movie. But I mean, even in all the other matches that I've ever watched, you know, it's like anytime that they go outside of the ring, you know, it's like that's real. Like that, there's nothing that is not fake when they're out there and not trying to bounce off the mat and use the mat as different leverage points and way to absorb a hit and all that stuff. When you're out there on that concrete, and even with those little black mats that are out there's no protection. And I don't know, those guys, it blows me away to think that that there's all those scripted elements, and then you have the outside physicality of, if you can endure the pain that I'm going to put you through, or my words, the beating that I'm going to put you through, you might be able to win this match. But you have to get to the end of that script to be able to, you know, to achieve that, right? So, I mean, it's just crazy to think that here's all these skilled professionals, and I'm using the air quotes, they're skilled professionals, and you're bringing up, no, you're bringing up somebody new. No, you're bringing up somebody new. So like you got your veterans. I'm sorry, you got your veterans, and they're bringing up somebody new. You know, and you're getting hazed for the most part. You're getting beat up pretty good to be able to continue to advance and get that promotion. It's a crazy sport. And I really wish that when I was watching it in the 90s and the 2000s, I would have looked at it differently and would have enjoyed it more.
So you didn't enjoy wrestling?
I enjoyed the action, but you know, it's like taking a look at some of the scripted, or taking a look back at some of the videos of like The Rock, like let's go back to the microphone, you know, like the aspect of wrestling, and you got to be able to talk in the microphone, like Ric Flair, The Rock, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like at that point in time, when they would talk on the microphone, I'd get up and leave. I'd like go make a snack and stuff, you know? And
okay.
So yeah, I liked all that. And then now I'm looking back, and it's like, man, I missed out on so much. Even when we went to the Tacoma Dome in like 2000, and we went to some wrestling event. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like the first one that I had been to in a long time. And it was me, you, and Angie and X. And we went and we watched, and it was like the first time in a long time. But leading into that, I was trying to watch, I think we went to Raw. I think it was Raw. And I was watching the weeks leading into it, because I wanted to pick up on the storyline. You know, it was like, well, I don't know any of these guys anymore. So it was like trying to pick up on the storyline. And then I was starting to see some of the interviews and all that. But anyways, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. I love the mic work. I think it's absolutely amazing what those skilled professionals do in the ring, both physically and mentally.
Yes. No. And part of the microphone work is that they are some of the greatest one-take actors ever. You know, in that thing, because when you're doing it live in front of an audience, you got the one take, you're doing it live, go say the thing. And so because they have a character, this isn't their, you know, these aren't the characters they're playing are not who they are in real life. Sometimes their names are what their names are in real life, but a lot of times it's an exaggerated version of themselves, or just an exaggerated character they're making up to that will be that the crowd will respond to. But yeah, and even in scripted, that going into part of it where part of it, the scene when Michael first starts becoming a wrestler. And the tragedy of that. So I'm gonna jump to this. I did not like the scene where the wrestlers are discussing what they're going to do in the locker room. There's an aspect of that where it's kind of okay because they're only discussing the ending. But the thing with wrestling is that the only thing that is scripted is that they do know how it's going to end. But throughout it's not like they memorize what is choreographed and memorize ahead of time. Throughout it, they tell each other what they're going to do. And then they perform a series of a few moves, and then the other one will tell. And so typically, as you rise to the ranks of wrestling, the one that is whoever's the higher ranked person or higher, more professional, more seasoned or better at it is telling the other one, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that. And, but they're communicating it throughout. And then the referee actually communicates to them, okay, there's even aspects of the referee communicates, okay, time to wrap it up. And then they tell each other, okay, now we're going to do this thing and everything like that, and that's how we're going to end. But
the whole time whispering sweet nothings into each other's ears as to this is how we're going to get
exactly.
This.
It's yes.
No, it is.
Yes, exactly. It's one of the reasons why, like, if you watch professional wrestling, and one of the little things that's not really noticed, but a lot of their moves, all these various moves are doing, a lot of them always bring their heads close to each other. And part of that is to make sure that when their heads come close to each other, it's when they can just whisper something to each other, that way they know what they're about to do next.
Like I need to get back to the dark side.
I was getting happy talking about wrestling. I apologize.
I know. I'm sorry. We got to bring it back to the tragedy. David died. Now let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. Yeah, David died. He gets it. Then Kerry wins. So Kerry wins the coin toss and wins, and he's a winner. And then he goes, apparently rides on a motorcycle because he can't come down and loses his foot.
Yep.
So that's bad. And then to me, the next tragedy is not death. The next tragedy was what happened with Michael. And that he obviously was a musician and wanted to, do that. That was really his path. It wasn't that there was something wrong with him or that it was listless or didn't know what he wanted to do necessarily. It was his desired goals was different than wrestling. He wanted to, play music and do that. And then the tragedy of it to me of him was that after Kerry loses his foot, the next thing you know, Michael's in the ring. And he had no business being in the ring.
No, he had no business whatsoever jumping in. And that's a very good point. It was like one tragedy begot another tragedy, you lose a brother and you lose a foot of a brother. And hey, you know what? Here comes that motto, just pushing the family forward. Let's take this gifted kid of music, which, by the way, the children all of a sudden find out that dad had a skill that nobody knew, and a skill that mom, had that nobody knew as they were sitting there talking about it, which is just crazy because I think it just continues to show that motto just drove the whole family to, that ultimate success.
Yeah.
And then so let's pull the kid, the music kid who has the skinniest arms out of the whole family.
yes, he does.
And let's let's go ahead and start, putting them in headlocks and throwing them around, and then the poor kid, he's throwing some pretty cool kicks, and he's jumping around and kicking multiple dudes, and then he lands just awkwardly on his shoulder, and then he busts out his shoulder and he has surgery, and then it's weird, it's the curse.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like the curse because the way the movie portrays it now, they're compressing things for time, and that's in a movie, and that's fine. But the way the movie portrays it is basically it's his first match, which it wasn't. But it's his first match. He does a drop kick, goes into surgery, then gets toxic shock syndrome. Yep. So yeah, say that even 2 times fast. And then he has brain damage, from it, and so it's like, he was, who knows how good he would have been as a musician, right? He was just kind of like the way the movie's portrayed is, okay, it's not like you can be like, oh, well, he'd have been the biggest, star in the world at that. Yeah, maybe not. But either way, he potentially had the ability to try to make a good go of it, to then maybe do that professionally and pursue that passion of his life.
Right.
And then he follows into the footsteps of this, and then turns out that he ends up with brain damage. This movie is gone really, there's like at least two things from a medical standpoint. I was like, I'd never even heard of this.
Really?
So have you heard of toxic shock syndrome before?
I had.
Yeah.
Only because of family members that, you go into a surgery and they're like, hey, there is the possibility, and let me show you this in the paperwork, or, let me tell you that this could be a possibility. However, it's not likely.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you were one up on me, because I'd never even heard of that. And so, but yeah, that he gets that and then has the brain damage, and he effectively loses a bunch of weight, can't handle his life as it is now. He can no longer play guitar. Like, they kind of gloss over it in this scene where he tries to play the guitar a little bit, but he basically can't play the guitar, writes a suicide note, takes a bunch of pills and drinks some beer, chases it with a beer, and then goes out to the field and kills himself. And that is also then another tragedy, another time when now they have to go to another funeral, because now they have, which I have felt that was the worst, because somewhere in there they do mention the oldest brother that died. That's right, because by this point Kevin's already had the first date with Pam, and talks about that he's not the oldest, and there was
little
an older
Jakey
one. So
or whatever.
Yes, and so at this moment I am like going like, wow, that is really horrible as a parent that. You've had, that means with the combination of it, they had in this movie, they had 5 kids, and so far now 3 of them have died.
Right. And the 2, David and Kerry lost his foot, and Kerry lost his, two died, and one has lost a foot. But it seems like it occurs very quickly. Like this is all happening within a year's period of time.
Yes, and that was one of the and I found that to be a thing, which, and the whole thing being a year, that includes jumping ahead to the next tragedy. That includes then Kerry Von Erich, where he can't deal with the pain of life with the one foot and trying to still wrestle and doing that, and then he does some drugs and he does lots of drinking and drugs. They do show a little bit of that when he's partying, when he's healthier, and he goes into he goes to the family farm and shoots himself in the chest. Which honestly, when I did that, just as an aside, I really thought that so did he do that way? When I thought of it, I was like, did he do that because he thought maybe something was CTE? To shoot yourself in the chest, but this is way before people were even thinking. This is way before CTE, but it's kind of like I'm watching it with my eyes now, and I think, oh, a guy that does sports shoots himself in the chest. He must think there might be something wrong with his brain for CTE.
Yeah,
the CTE. Which I mean, that no one had heard of this because this is
87 or something like that. Yeah,
88. I don't know. It's 80 something, which means nobody's thinking about CTE.
No.
And so
I mean, we were still smoking in the cars with our parents with the windows rolled up and no seatbelt.
That's how my grandmother rolled. Yeah, if I rolled the window down, she'd be like, boy, you better roll that window up. You letting all the good smoke out.
Right.
And to me, this was very bang, bang, bang. It happened in a short period of time, and that, for me, was also part of one of the quibbles I have with this movie, was that I wasn't pulled. It was so kind of rapid fire. I was not pulled into it emotionally that I was identifying with them, because I found myself turning on a couple things. The first one was that I realized I noticed in real time that the baby was only like 3-4 months old. So that meant that because when David dies, it's right after the wedding, Kevin and Pam's wedding, Kevin and Pam's wedding, and then David dies shortly after that. But when they get married, she's already pregnant.
Right, shotgun wedding.
And so right, shotgun wedding, because she's already pregnant.
Yep.
So then in between that and this baby being 4 months old, David dies. Kerry becomes champ. Kerry loses a foot. Michael goes into wrestling. Michael gets the surgery and dies, and then commits suicide. Kerry has more psychological problems, and then shoots himself in the shoulder, and the baby is now 4 months old, right? And the fact that I recognized that in real time told me that this movie wasn't drawing me in to all the tragedy as well, because it was kind of like tragedy porn, right? Like it was like this is like just it's kind of too much, and then to compress it that way, where you're like that much time, it was like, oh well, yeah, that's like all this stuff just kind of happened. Like I was like, this is the worst year ever.
Well, but I mean, if you take a look at the timeline of when all of the when everybody actually committed suicide, I don't think it's as quick as the movie portrayed. I want to say that there's
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
So
they're 3 years apart.
Yeah. I mean, it's like crazy
they're
drama.
apart, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up the baby thing, because I was sitting there like trying to figure that out. I was like, I asked Angie, I was like, do they have another kid? Is that like the second kid, or is that a third kid? Is that, and then later on, Kevin's got 2 kids that, he's hanging out with two of his boys. And I was like, okay, so maybe that other, I wanted to rewind it and be like, okay, is that the same kid, or is it like kid 2? It's just we think that it's kid 1 because we just saw kid 1, So no, it's the same. You think it's the same
kid.
See,
same kid, baby number 1.
I don't.
They just did the whole thing. They just did the whole thing all like that. And so that was it becomes that it's too fast with it. And then also I found over time that and this is what I found interesting with my reaction to it as well, was at first I was like, oh, that the poor mother, she lost their, losing David, and I think that's the worst, having your kid die before you, right? Because that's the worst. So I watched it with my oldest. I watched this movie with my oldest son. I told him, I was like, no, just make sure we're all on the same page here. You're burying me, not the other way around. Part of what I found about my reaction to it, another reason why I thought that maybe this isn't working, what they're trying to portray, is that over time I started feeling, as it got worse and worse for her, for the mother, so the mother, Doris, played by Mara Tierney. I've never known how to pronounce her name. Every time I've read it, I never say it out loud. And she was great in this. But I mean, I understand she's being the very submissive, old school 1950s wife to her husband, letting her husband dictate all the terms of things. But I felt that she could have done things to kind of smooth things off. Not only. And I think it's even brought up in 2 pivotal scenes, which is one when Kevin is telling her to talk to Dad about Michael. She's just too hard on Michael. Like, just, maybe have him ease up a little bit. And she's like, well, that's between them. I can't be involved in that. Right.
Yeah.
And then the part of like, oh, you want to be in a band, like your, music, like your father. He was a great clarinetist and all that. And then he's like, yeah, well, we're doing a concert tonight. And she's like, no. And even when the other brothers all get together and say, we'll all go with him, which is like, any safety concerns you have at that point should be very much ameliorated, because we're talking about 3 large men,
right? Professional wrestlers,
professional wrestlers, right? That will protect him to the death, right? So nothing's going to happen to him on this college campus, right?
Right.
So that you're still saying no, because you effectively are. It's as if she's trying to then say that, well, really the father would say no, but she's doing it to be the bad guy, so he doesn't have to be the bad guy, so he can kind of be the good guy. But then I'm like, well, that's still kind of your fault, because this is a moment where you kind of have a lot of leverage, and you can just say, yeah, go do that, to at least provide the impression that we as parents support you going a different route in some manner, but we don't. And so that could have helped out some, as far as the directions of things that they were doing in life, and how she could have been more beneficial. And so I felt that after a while, I started viewing her as the bad guy and not the father. So I don't know. Was that I could be on
I like that.
Like, how did you interpret the parent dynamics as the movie went on?
Well, I didn't like the parent dynamics at all, but I felt really comfortable. It was really easy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's I think you just made an excellent point, and I don't mean to just be like, just jumping right onto your really good point here, but I didn't think about it until you said it. I think it's easy for everybody to want to think that the dad is the villain, but yeah, now in retrospect, now I'm really thinking about it. Yeah, the mom had some serious opportunities to put everything to rest, like just a little love, and I think you can even tell that there's not a whole lot of motherly love amongst or for the boys. When Kevin's out on his date with his girl for the first time in the restaurant, and he tells the story that, they lost little Jake, and she's like, can I give you a hug? And she gives him a hug, and he looks awkward. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands, like what do I do? You're giving me a hug. What do I do? Yeah. Like a woman's never hugged me before. And, without him saying it, that was the impression that I got. And instantly right then I was thinking, man, these kids really didn't have a whole lot of like motherly influence. These aren't mama boys by any means. They were, to your point earlier, they're just so entwined to each other that, they don't have that motherly dynamic. They don't have that fatherly dynamic other than the beaten fist of, bigger, better, faster, stronger, tougher. Nothing can kick us. Nothing will ever get us down. That was their dad. That was it. Like the motto was how he parented, and she parented with like praying for their safety, and you boys need to go and work this out for yourselves, and exactly. No motherly love, no nothing. So that dynamic I think contributed to a lot of the tragedy that the family had. If they think that it was a curse of any sort, I really think that it was more the lack of love, the lack of care, and the lack of just something as simple as a hug, man. Just a hug goes a long way.
Got it. The curse of neglect.
Curse of neglect. That's ultimately the curse.
Yeah. I found too that on that that to me the part of the failures of the movie was to make, from my perspective, was that I started feeling that the mother was the real villain, and then on top of that, I started feeling that the father. You could tell the movie was really trying to make it where the father was the bad guy, and that Fritz was awful and horrible. And to me, I started thinking about it like, well, wrestling at that time, it's regional, it's a family business. Basically, he wants his kids to be in a family business. It'd been no different if he owned a dry cleaners. He just wanted it to be, Fritz and Sons.
Could have been a slaughterhouse. It's Texas, so yeah.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he could have been a cattle rancher. He's like, I need you guys working on the ranch.
Right.
So, and that's kind of what, and I felt that the movie did a bad job of telegraphing on every level, hey, this is the person you're supposed to root against. He is the negative influence on their lives and the root cause of all their problems and everything like that. And I found that I didn't buy it. That I was like, no, I don't think it's, don't get me wrong. Fritz has some responsibilities here with some of these things he's doing. But at the same time, it's like, he is pushing his kids in the way that he understands to do that, and he's trying to do what he thinks is best, even when it's not necessarily in their best interest or caring about how they feel about things emotionally. And that the parent that should have some gauge of like every now and again, I'm gonna check in with how they are emotionally, was absent, checked out, deferred everything. And even though I don't think the mother could have changed everything,
no,
she could have changed something.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
And then because even when they do that great scene of where she wants to get a different at Kerry's funeral, she's like, I can't wear this wedding dress because everyone's already seen me in it,
right?
Which is tragic. Like you've gone to enough of your children's funerals that you're like, you know what, I need to wear something different.
Right.
That's a lot of funerals.
I thought about that at the same time. I was like, oh my God. The sarcastic side of me, like, so here, dark movie, my dark humor went with like, oh my God, my other kid died and everybody's going to notice that I've worn the same dress. I need another one. It's like, are you kidding me? That would be like one of my last things on my mind if I've gone through all that tragedy to be able to say that, like, I don't know. It was off-putting, very off-putting.
For me, the real tragedy of the movie happens next. So in the storyline, which is they hired an actor to impersonate Ric Flair. And I could not handle it.
It was
I honestly, that was the only moment that I really wanted to cry in this movie. I was like, do not have someone impersonate Ric Flair. There is one Ric Flair, and he is Ric Flair. I mean, it would have been better just to grab some old footage of Ric Flair doing that interview or doing an interview like that, and then just play that.
And that there is footage from that fight that when he was there, somebody has got to have something. And I agree. It would have been much better to cut in the old original footage or even grab one from some other Ric Flair tangent, throw it in there, and then have the actor that is portraying him, come out and, do the wrestling and do the dance and stuff, and do the Ric Flair stomp. Do that. That's fine. You can't find anybody that's going to look like the man. You definitely ain't going to find anybody that is as talented as the man, as handsome as the man. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry.
My shoes, $500.
My inner Ric Flair's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shoes, styling and profile. So, yeah.
I got a limousine and it's a mile long, and I got 60 girls in there.
Exactly.
Or 30 or whatever it was.
And and his whole thing was like, and they all want to ride on Space Mountain. Right. I mean, it was the best. So yeah. So it's like, I mean, come on, you can't have someone do that. And so, okay, so
I'm sorry.
Like I said, the biggest issue in the movie, honestly, is how they portray the wrestling as a whole. So I had a lot of issues with them portraying the wrestling as a whole. And so I think that not only what they did on the in-ring stuff, because it was obvious they wanted the actors to actually do the wrestling, and the actors were not all good at it, and so that is what it is. And in some of these movies you can forgive that, but they also do, as you mentioned, they show that stuff is real, like when Kerry Von Erich is wrestling for the championship. I think it was against Ric Flair, or the Intercontinental one. I don't know. Maybe that was against Ric Flair, maybe something else. But they showed the actual match.
Yeah, they did show a little.
She's watching because the mom's watching it on television. Because and so so Doris or Dottie, I think Dottie, she's watching on television. She's watching the actual match. So they had ways to get around some of these things. But the Ric Flair thing, the interview, and honestly, even the in-ring stuff with Ric Flair, I could have forgiven that as far as the actor does it and all that, but the interview, like the reason Ric Flair is as great as he is, is that the interview thing. And to have someone else do it, part of it is that it doesn't work. If everybody could do what Ric Flair does, they would have. Right. It just doesn't, you can't have someone else doing it. And so it takes you right out of it, because you're like, well, this guy's just this cornball and not the greatest wrestler ever to ever live.
Right. Yeah. I think I've seen better Ric Flair interpretations on Instagram versus what that actor did. No offense. I mean, acting's hard. I get it. Congratulations. You got the gig, on your IMDb page. I think you've only got a couple other gigs, I mean, hats off to you, brother. But I couldn't justify receiving that paycheck for a Ric Flair haphazard interpretation. Like, seriously, I mean, they could have just done a voiceover. I don't know. I feel like we could beat up that subject, because you're right. I mean, even though I am not a huge wrestling follower, I know who Ric Flair is, and his craziness, his rhymes, his riddles, and just who he is, and as flamboyant as that handsome man can be, it's only him that can do that. And yeah, I mean, that is a very tragic moment, from a wrestling standpoint. Absolutely. But I do have to make a comment, though, because I understand why you were saying about the wrestling action. I follow you on that. But in my head, what I was justifying was that back in the 70s and 80s, the wrestling wasn't as athletic as it is now. So perhaps some of the movements, at least from what I remember watching as a child, I remember thinking, okay, well, you could have thrown somebody a little bit harder, or you could have hit somebody a little bit harder. And in some of those wrestling moves in the movie, I was attributing it to, maybe, yes, the actors aren't skilled, but maybe it lent a visual benefit, because the speed of the wrestling back then wasn't as fast as it is now. Although I will say there were a couple of moments where you could clearly see that the film was kind of like sped up a little bit to make the actors roll or move a little bit faster.
When I was watching the movie, I was with you on that. I started thinking, okay, they're not as athletic and all, everything you just said.
Yeah.
And then I watched twice the scene where she's watching the match on television.
Okay.
And when you and I, because I was having that same generous thought, and I was like, I'm going to go with this because I wanted to like this movie. I wanted to enjoy this movie, and I really, really wanted to. And so I said, oh, well, let me go back and look at this and see, is my memory, like, am I looking at this on film thinking that they're doing it slow because my memory is what it is now, like false memories,
right?
That I remember it was now and it's not what it was then. And then if you watch that little scene when they showed them actually wrestling, it's not that big of a difference from then to now.
Really?
The difference is what they're doing, not the speed at which they move, not the athleticism and stuff like that. It's not that big of a difference.
Oh, all right. Huh.
Yeah, so it made the wrestling portrayal even worse for me. Since I'm on my bone to pick,
okay.
Even the casting of Kerry Von Erich. So first off, Jeremy Allen White is a great actor, right? He's definitely acclaimed. He has these he's getting Emmys now, getting Emmys off the Bear and everything like that. He's great, and in it, he's doing some great acting. But to me, the problem was this role did not require great acting. What the role required was to not look like you're 5'6", right? And because he looked so small. Yeah. And Kerry, being the most important one, he was big. They were all, honestly, they were all big.
Right.
And there's part of that I wanted to forgive because Zac Efron isn't that tall, so you wanted to have stuff that they were, in line with the range of that. But then Kerry is bigger than Kevin. Not by honestly, that if you look at the pictures of him in real life, Kerry is bigger than Kevin.
Yeah.
Now David is a giant, a giant of a man, right? But they're all bigger, and so then and in relation to each other, Jeremy Allen White still appeared diminutive next to them all, and it's like, well, no, but you're the biggest deal. You're the main reason why when they said Von Erich, I was like, oh, that's why I know who they are, and so that took me out of it. And so there was a lot of different things about that. I felt that there is a great story to be told here, and I understand that you're probably not gonna get a better version of the story ever made, but I found that it did not grab me and it did not break it where I was even caring about it because I was paying attention to too much of the logistics in the real world, and then B, the fact that as the wrestling fan of me, I'm thinking the acting that they have on there, I'm like, what, just get some stunt doubles in there and CGI their faces or whatever, make them all luchadors. I don't care, right? The wrestling part wasn't as good, and I could not get past that Kerry looked so small. And then what was your impression of the end when the brothers are all reunited?
Oh man. Yeah, I think we could probably have a whole show just on that. I got to tell you, I didn't really care for the ending. I don't like the way that was portrayed. Just, we don't even need to get into the whole religious beliefs of it all, but, it's just like the idea of here are all these people that have committed suicide that are now on, no matter which way you believe it, if you're on the other side or whatever, but now they're all joined together and they're all happy and healthy. And then they all get to meet their oldest brother, Jack, as a 5-year-old. And it's just like, I don't know. I didn't like it.
And Kerry had both feet.
Yeah, Kerry has both, and then, and what was the brother that had the belt? Like the other brother had the belt around because like
that had the belt.
Yeah. So remember, like when Kerry arrived, he said, oh, hey brother, you got the heavyweight belt in the afterlife or something like that. Did you not see that?
Oh. No.
Yeah.
Is that David?
Yeah.
Did he have a belt?
So David has a heavyweight belt on the dock, and
really,
yeah. And Kerry even says, "Oh, so you've got the belt in the afterlife, even."
I did not remember that part of it, but okay, yeah.
So I mean, no, I didn't. I did not like the way that was portrayed. The whole suicide thing. Let's talk about that. Can we talk about that too? What was your thoughts?
So my thought was I had an issue with the glamorization of the results of suicide. And so that it made it sound like that this family's gone through a lot of tragedy. And while the youngest, the young child didn't commit suicide, and neither did David, at least as it's portrayed in the movie. The idea that at the end of that, your thought bubble, your thought experiment is, oh, they are now all finally together in this happy place. And so you've now glamorized the results of this tragic thing. And almost normalized it and not thought about like, well, suicide is an abnormal thing and you have to be going through some serious mental issues of some kind, like something really getting you to make you want to kill yourself, right? And that suicide should never be viewed as, well, this is the normal outcome of how you would react to, this obstacle X, right? And but then to take that to say, okay, well, they did this and now they're finally happy, and I felt that it glamorized it. And that was my real issue with that choice. Even though I understand and recognize that as the movie's portraying it, it's a thought experiment, like it's Kevin's kind of thinking this is what's going on. But at the same time, to just portray it that way, it makes it where you're trying to, in a sense, put a happy ending on this movie.
Yeah, it's something that could have easily just not been done. Like, I understand from a drama perspective, the visual that you're bringing, like the hopes of that scene in my head is that if you're putting that scene out there, you're putting that out there because you're hoping that you have enough people that have emotionally been brought through this movie and have associated themselves to these brothers. And now you are, feeling happy for them because now all their pain and all their suffering and, they no longer have to hear the motto, you could have just cut that out and started rolling the credits and it would have been fine.
Man, Jim, it is always great to talk with you about sports, movies, and life. To everyone listening to this, thank you for downloading the show. If you would like to continue the conversation about this or any other sports movie, contact us on our Discord page at truestory.fm. Please like, rate, review, and most importantly, share this show with anyone you know that loves sports and movies.